Then the hand of Jesus touched me, and now I am no longer the same. You know the chorus, come on. He touched me. Oh, he touched me. Yes, he did. And oh, the joy that was made. Something happened. Let me hear you. Something happened. Now I know he touched me and made me whole. Something a little bit different that's not written on your page right now. Linda talked about living in Washington, and when Jeff was about 8 years old, and he was always reading about the presidents, and we were already conditioning him early, you know, and we said we're going to take him to Washington D.C. And so he was about 8 years old, and it was like 100 degrees out there, and she made him dress up, and you know, and everything. He was just sweating. But we go to the Capitol, and we were just going to go look around. And I literally walked into one of our congressmen. And hey, what are you doing here? Showing Jeff, come with me, come on, I'm going for vote. So he brings us in to the house of what they're doing. Then he said, come to the office right now. And we got a picture of Jeff sitting in a congressman's chair. And he actually ended up working for the congressman that took that chair years later. So he's 8 years old, and he goes home and he says, I'm coming back here. You know, when I'm 8 years old, you know, I'm just going to get out the rain, you know. Yeah, I'm coming back here. Well, finally, he kept that vision, and he graduated when he did, and he spent years working for 2 of our United States. In fact, remember that night we were flying with you and with Jeff and one of those senators, and before it was over, you were doing the Charles Green thing. You were praying. You laid hands on that, and we did that, and Jeff and I were with you that night. You worked for 2 U.S. senators and also on the senior staff of the House Whip, Majority Whip. And so those are connections. But anyway, Dad loved the World War II stuff, and Jeff did too. And Jeff started telling some stories to me last night. And I said, Cindy was right about the hat. You know, he wore that hat. He said, you know, you get a lot of free meals, you know, and you wear this. He said, I get so many meals all the time. He said, I'll wear this hat. And so he was working it all the way out, I'll tell you that right now. So Jeff, I said, why don't you say something? And Jeff said, come here, buddy, share that. And he wrote some things down last night. Take your time, pal. Do a good job.
Thank you. So I'll definitely be quick. I mean, I can be here and tell stories even outside of the church realm. I mean, I always felt like when I was with him, it was kind of like the Christian version of Oscar and Hammerstein's musical. Because at one point you would have a long talk and some lesson that's being learned, and all of a sudden we belt out in a song. And the song goes for however long it goes, and everyone has to sing in, or everyone acts like he's not singing, and that's what we had to deal with. So in 2011 I left. In the 2010, starting in 2011, I moved to Washington, and by 2012 I moved over to the House side. I was working for a member of Congress. Actually, that member that we met, you talked about how I worked. So I have a letter that he wrote me when I was a kid. I still have that letter. I found it recently. Yeah, on the letterhead, wishing me the best in my career, and I ended up working on the campaign that defeated him. So, so in 2012, I was still kind of a junior staffer. Very, I mean, when I mean junior, I mean I was way low at the totem pole. And it was great because he was in town, and you don't necessarily get a windfall profit to work for the government. And so I was setting up meals, wanting to go to every restaurant we can go to, and so I gave him a tour of the Capitol, and it was a blast. Thankfully, my boss was able to give me the day off, and so I parked. He met me in my office, and I brought him to my car, and I happened to have the congressional plate that day. They gave that to me. And it's kind of like an all parking pass. I can park anywhere I want. And so I decided I was going to try to impress him. So I parked my car right up on the steps of the Capitol. And he was just wowed by him. We walked through the chambers. I brought him through the House. I brought him to the Senate. It was supposed to be a 90-minute tour. It ended up being over 2.5 hours because he wanted to stop and talk to every single person, whether it was an elevator operator or a Capitol Police officer or it was a staffer, asking if they knew me or if I knew them. And I'm like, no, I'm a staff assistant. I just give tours and I go back. So I knew he enjoyed that, and one of the things was he asked after we did the tour, he wanted to go see the World War II Memorial, and so I had the plate. I was like, perfect. I know he prides on his mobility, even in his final days. He didn't want to be touched to be brought up. He wanted to be on his own. So I parked up in front of the World War II Memorial, and it's a really beautiful monument. You're surrounded by Jefferson, you're surrounded by Lincoln, you're surrounded by the White House. And he took his time. He read out loud every quote that was etched in granite and marble. He looked at every pillar. He talked to everyone. And as we were wrapping up, we were walking back to my car, and a bus pulls up, and there's this band. It's like a little marching band that's kind of waiting. And he's like, what's going on here? And I said, I think that's the Honor Flight, which is a nonprofit. They fly veterans up, and they bring a family member with them, and they get to see all the memorials that's dedicated to them. And he was like, well, I want to stay. I want to meet them. And so I said, okay. So we went over where the band, and the door swings open, and everybody's clapping and cheering, and he's there, and he's wanting to shake hands and say hello to everybody, and introducing himself, introducing me. So anyway, there's one veteran who's kind of feeble in a wheelchair, and he's with his grandson or very young son. And he talked to him for a few minutes, and then when he was done, he kind of hit me and said, let's go. So we get into the car, and I said, man, did you enjoy that? He goes, I love that. He goes, so you know the guy that we were just talking to? He goes, he actually was in Korea. He goes, he's almost 10 years younger than me. And I'm walking. And he laughs and he hits me and he just belts it out. And that was now the highlight of the rest of the trip, was the fact that someone that was 10 years younger than him has to be in a wheelchair and he's just marching around. But he was proud of me. I knew that. He told me that. And I knew that because every congregation he would speak to after that, he would invite them to meet me if they ever were in Washington, D.C. And it got to the point, the interns in the office knew. I'd get a phone call, and I'd be in the back, and they'd go, your friends of your grandfather's here to see you? And I finally had to call him. I said, look, you can't do, I can't leave and give these tours. And I remember calling him one day and I said, hey, I just met the so-and-so family from, I don't know, Sheboygan or whatever. And the Millers or whatever. And he goes, who? I was like, they said you were at their house, you had a meal with them. Okay. That was like, I don't know when that was. Okay. So he finally cut it out. We still had a couple bleeding in that would show up, and I'd have to bring them. So then, all right, this is near the end. So fast forward, in 2018, Billy Graham died. I don't have to give any introduction to Billy Graham. Everyone knows who Billy, even the heathen on the street knows who Billy Graham is. So he was given a very high honor when he passed away to what's called Lion Honor. To Lion Honor is a very rare occurrence. In fact, the person before Billy Graham was in 2005, and that was Rosa Parks, so rightfully so. And so they brought the casket up into the rotunda, and he was surrounded by the Capitol Police Honor Guard, and I texted him, and I said, hey, I'm going to go and pay my respects to Billy Graham. There's cameras all over the place. You want to see me on C-SPAN? He would always watch C-SPAN or Fox. He was always calling me anytime there was if I knew if it made the headlines, I was going to get a call. He was asking, were you in the room when Trump did this? Or were you in the room when Obama? No, I wasn't. But I said, if you turn on C-SPAN in about 10 minutes, I'm gonna make the turn, I'm gonna go upstairs and you're gonna see me. And he just texted me back, okay. So I go up, I go through the Capitol, and it's a little bit later in the day, it's after work. And so there's not many people in there. And actually I had my pastor who was with me. I got him in. So I go up, and he's right dead center in the rotunda. Everyone's seen that, whether, the last one was President Bush. So I go up, and I go up to the casket, I say a prayer, thank God for this man, and everything. As I'm standing there, my phone starts buzzing. And I'm not, and it's off, thankfully, it's always off. I will crawl into a hole if you hear any ringtone coming from my phone. But it starts buzzing, and it keeps buzzing, and it keeps buzzing, and I'm walking out of the rotunda, and I'm like, what? And I look, and it's him. And he keeps calling. And as I go downstairs, I go down to the crypt, I make the turn, I finally pick up, yes. And he goes, Jeffrey. So you saw that coffin, that casket? Yes, sir. He goes, did you know that was built by the inmates at Angola prison? Yes. That was pretty evident. That was blasted everywhere. He goes, your memo and I want that. He said, I want you to see what you can do to make that happen. And I thought about it. I thought he was joking at first. He's not joking. He's very serious. And I'm playing it out in my head, I can make these calls, and I'm going to say, look, my grandfather's a minister. You know the Billy Graham? Yeah, okay. So I did some research, made some calls. It just there was no way it was going to work. So there was a lot of reasons, but I called him back a few days later, and I said, look, I'm sorry, I can't swing this. And he pauses and he goes, well, that would have been neat though. Well, look, my grandfather, I loved him to death. We were on the phone a lot. He would call me randomly. Asking me what was my favorite Yul Brynner movie. And, Magnificent Seven. But he leaves behind children, grandchildren, cousins, nephews, nieces, parishioners, ministers, teachers, friends, church movements. But the impact he had on all of us, and what Matt was saying, even in generations of imams talking about connections. We're getting in the 5th and 6th generations now. And we all, as we train up the next generation, we and they will stand as a perpetual memorial to his leadership and his vision and his indestructible courage. Thank you.